guys, so we are live on Facebook coming to you from, I think we're in Swatera Township. So y'all know I'm getting all out around the county so that I can hit all the voters throughout the entire county of Dauphin. So we are in Swatera Township right now at Ruby Tuesdays, and I am seated here next to my very good friend Jeff Deskovic. So Jeff, I'm going to let you take over and tell everybody who you are and what you're doing here, because you're a New Yorker. So tell everybody why you're here today.
Well, bottom line is I'm here to support you. So I'm an exonerate. I was exonerated through DNA testing after being wrongfully imprisoned for 16 years, from age 17 to 32, for a murder and rape which I didn't commit, that I ultimately was exonerated up through DNA testing. I'm an advocate. I'm an attorney now.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
And I have a foundation, and we fight wrongful conviction and free innocent people. And I'm here today because you and I have done tremendous work way before you decided to run for your judgeship. Lorenzo Johnson, who was someone wrongfully imprisoned in Harrisburg in Dauphin County, was a client of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation, and you helped to coordinate many rallies, press conferences, and demonstrations outside the Attorney General's office. So you did a lot of that grassroots work. You connected us with lots of advocacy groups in Harrisburg. And so that's one of the things that why I'm supporting you is because you're well connected into the advocacy community organizers. You know all about wrongful conviction from your work with Lorenzo and the foundation and other cases besides that. So you have a long history. So I guess my point is that you're not a Jill come lately to criminal justice reform work or wrongful conviction. I think that you would be particularly effective as a judge in the following ways. Okay, so first of all, you're going to preside over trials. Now, a judge sets the tone for how a trial goes. There's too many times in these wrongful conviction cases where people are misidentified. So before there's a trial, when the court has to hold a hearing to determine whether the identification procedures were suggested. That's caused wrongful convictions in 75% of the cases, the misidentification cases. The judge is the gatekeeper for that. The judge has to determine whether those identification procedures are fair or not.
That's right.
Okay? Coerced false confessions have caused wrongful convictions in 25% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. Again, before a trial commences, when there is a statement that's going to be used as evidence, the court has to hold a pre-trial hearing to determine whether or not the suspect was given their rights, where they read their Miranda warnings, were they coerced. In too many of those, and that's a decision made by the judge. And the reason why we don't want coerced false confessions is because innocent people will falsely confess, and there's a high conviction rate in cases where there's a confession. So in too many of these wrongful conviction cases, the trial judge declines to suppress that faulty evidence. So right there, having you on the bench with you knowing about wrongful convictions can prevent you from presiding over a wrongful conviction case in the process. So that's a big part of why I'm supporting you. And another aspect of that is, here in Pennsylvania, the PCRA, Post-Conviction Relief Act, is when people who have already been wrongfully convicted, when they discover new grounds, new evidence that probably would have resulted in a different verdict, or evidence of actual innocence, or withheld material, those PCRA petitions go back to the trial court in front of the trial judge. So unfortunately, one of the aspects that determines whether or not a wrongful conviction case will remain intact or not turns not on the facts in the law, which is what it's supposed to turn on, okay, but instead whether or not a judge is going to give a fair hearing to that newly discovered evidence. So too many times, judges find ways to skirt issues, use technicalities to preserve wrongful convictions, which means you're going to use some rule to stop an innocent person from being released, right? And I want to mention that just as proof of that, the average length of wrongful convictions 14 years, and by the time people are exonerated, it's typical that their appeals have long since been exhausted. So when you read these case summaries of people who are exonerated, we see many junctures along the way where these injustices could have and should have been corrected and prevented, starting with the trial level, the aspects I mentioned, but then afterwards, credible PCRA petitions, which are often turned down, and then that preservation continues through the appellate process. So my point is that having a fair and honest judge who's well-versed in wrongful conviction, who's really there not to be a sign-off just for the government, but also being fair and giving the government its just due. Okay, having somebody fair is a key. Okay, and so based upon that, I wholeheartedly endorse you, and I want people to vote for you and support your campaign. But I'm a New Yorker, okay, and I'm an attorney and I'm an exoneree, but we have plenty of exonerees here in Pennsylvania. I am an advisory board member of the statewide coalition group. It could happen to you. And so, of course, nonprofits don't endorse candidates, but individuals do, though. I can endorse as an individual, and I've done that, but I think that there's some other Pennsylvania exonerees also that favor your candidacy, and let's hear from some of them. And the reason why they're so important is because they're all illustrations of what can happen when justice goes wrong, and too many times the judges are complicit in that. It's not just the cops, it's not just the prosecutors, but it also can be the judges. So I've said my piece. Thank you for listening to me.
And thank you so much, and I just value our friendship so much. Like Jeff said, we met many years ago while we were advocating for Lorenzo Johnson and Corey Walker eventually, and that is a case that happened right here in Dauphin County in the city of Harrisburg. And so speaking of Dauphin County and the city of Harrisburg, let's have a quick conversation with this gentleman right here. So I need to get closer. So tell us about who you are and your whole spiel.
My name is Larry Trent Roberts. I'm from here, Harrisburg, born and raised. I'm sentenced to life. I served 13 years and 8 months. And anytime you're wrongfully convicted, every day is too much.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And how long have you been home?
I've been exonerated for 2 years now. And recently I just graduated at my CDL.
Your CDL, commercial driving license. Love it. Congratulations. But thank you for sharing your story. So I'm going to get up and walk over to our next friend. So let's introduce you to everybody and just tell us your name and what county you're from and all that stuff.
Okay, my name's Louis. I do 34 years in prison for a rape, homicide.
34 years for a rape and homicide that you did not commit. What county are you from?
Indiana County.
Indiana County, Pennsylvania.
Get a statute that the conversation is very important to me. I have known.
So you mean that once you were exonerated, you didn't have any income and just no money?
I still don't have no income, no one to hire me because of my age. And I got some medical issues that hold me back too. Again, so it's taking me to 20 pounds now.
And just in case you guys are having difficulty hearing him, he's saying that due to his age, he has not been successful at finding employment since he has been exonerated. And I am an advocate. Now this is separate from my pursuit to the bench because of course we have the separation of powers. And so for a change in the law to occur would have to happen legislatively. But again, like Jeff indicated, I've been doing this work for a very long time. And so I have been advocating for the passage of legislation that would compensate men and women who have been wrongly convicted and just released. Their families sometimes are no longer around, they don't have any money, and not necessarily received any training for the workforce because they were sentenced to life without parole. And so, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, no, she's still my wife, but I pretty much call her. She's been for the last 15 years in there. But I'm looking on her social media because I can't find a place to rent. I can't buy a place, anything like that, even a job, because the charge is still, the charge sentence and conviction is still in my record. And every time you see that, then I'm ruled out.
So even though you've been exonerated, your arrest record still reflects those charges of rape and homicide. What an injustice. And that's another thing that the organization is pushing for, is to have those initial arrest charges automatically expunged when you have been exonerated. And speaking of expungement, I am sponsoring an expungement clinic Saturday, October the 16th, and so I encourage you to come out. It's going to be in the city of Harrisburg at the Allison Hill Community Center, and there you can get information on what you need to do to apply for expungement. There will be information on how to apply for a pardon, how that process works, and you can learn about how to expunge your arrest record and certain convictions on your conviction record. So thank you so much for...
Let me add something. Another thing that we're pushing for here, happening, which intersects with what Jim mentioned. We are pushing for exonerate compensation. You know, Pennsylvania is one of 14 states. Could you believe it that this man hasn't gotten a dime yet? That there is no law in Pennsylvania for exonerate compensation. So what happened here in Pennsylvania is we're actually here because we did a whole round of meeting with elected officials. We're building support for that, as well as the reentry services for exonerees.
Thank you for adding that, Jeff.
And the thing is, in 2015, I was released. You would think the suit would be over now, the charge would be off the record. Under Pennsylvania law, I believe it's supposed to be taken off the record within 2 years. But mine's still on there. So I think I'm just on it until the lawsuit closes, and then I have to have an attorney,
So you have to hire an attorney to help you get charges expunged, the same charges that you were exonerated of.
Right now, I'm still being punished for a crime I didn't commit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And we've got one other person here, so I'm just going to pop up. Oh, you're right. And who do we have here? Mr. Drew Whitley. What county are you from? Allegheny, okay. So you went to prison in 1986, August 17th, 1986. May 1st, 2006 is your date of release. So your only income is $800 a month?
Yeah, definitely see you.
I bet it is, right? For something you didn't do. And you were exonerated through DNA. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here and helping push this effort along. And not just for yourselves, but for the men and women who sadly may come after you and behind you. I will always continue my advocacy in my private life, so to speak, but as Jeff indicated, I am running to be your next judge in our Dauphin County Court of Common Pleas, so I just want you guys to know more about me, my passion, my stance on these very important issues, and my pledge to you to always do what is right, to do what is fair, to do what is just, even when it is not the popular choice. You guys can always count on me for that. Was there anything else, Chef?
I would like to ask a question of both the exonerees here. Drew, in the course of you being wrongfully convicted, right, were there any rulings by the judge that were unfair, that facilitated the wrongful conviction? Yes, there were. You guys speak up though? Look at the earth.
Yeah.
So there were rulings against you in the course of your trial that were unfair, that facilitated your ultimate wrongful imprisonment for 20 years, right? That's an obvious thing, but I just want to hear from you. And Jim, I want to ask you the same thing. In the course of you being wrongfully convicted, which cost you 34 years, were there unfair rulings against you in the course of the trial that helped things go in that direction?
Yes, most definitely. The reason I got an natural life sentence was I was charged.
Can you speak up? I'm not sure if I'm getting you.
I was charged with homicide and conspiracy to commit homicide.
Right. You went to trial, right?
Yeah, the judge dismissed the conspiracy being found during any argument that the trial was over. He added a written charge that made it absolute that I would have no opportunity to argue the rape charge.
Wow. See, these are clear-cut examples of how having a fair person on the bench, okay, can make all the difference in the world. You know, whether the ultimate aims of justice are promoted, which is that innocent people go free while guilty people are convicted, albeit through fair trials, through lawfully and constitutionally obtained evidence. That's all we're asking for. Nothing more, but also nothing less.
That's it. Thank you guys. We are now going to break bread and have a good time, and I will see you all soon.